Shabbat Shalom, everybody. So I came back from Florida this week, and what was interesting about it is because amidst the chaos that has ensued in our country with regards to coronavirus, there are many preparations that people are taking in order to ensure their safety as well as the safety of others. And before I boarded my JetBlue flight home, I imagined that maybe there might be somebody who was on my flight who had already contracted coronavirus and chose to fly anyways. Turned out that my imagination was true. And I happened to have been sitting in the airport when that news came over that a person had done just that. And I thought to myself, well, I had just imagined the worst case scenario. And I remember fondly, as my mother often told me when I was a younger child, and of course having a vivid imagination, that it's usually never as bad as you imagine it's going to be. Well, in this case, it happened to have been. But as we know, JetBlue took all of the precautions. They cleaned the airplanes. In fact, from what I had heard, that they had shut down the terminal and cleaned the terminal as well. But it never dawned on me that someone could act so selfishly that that person would endanger the lives of others. Because I believe about human nature that we're good and that we care. And I choose that thought about humanity because the alternative to me is incomprehensible. I can't live in a world in which people's base instincts are what they succumb to most often. I'd rather think of humanity as good and human beings born with good intentions. And that some people go astray, but the majority of us want to do what's right and speak truth in our hearts. I choose that as what I think about humanity because we have a choice about our imaginations and we have a choice about what we think of other people. Havei l'chol adam l'kaf zechut. Give every person the benefit of the doubt, says Pirkei Avot. Because the alternative is to think everybody's out to get you. This morning's Parsha teaches an extraordinary moment of imagination. It teaches us where we allow our minds to go can be the worst places. We think to ourselves, oh, what is the worst case scenario? What frightens us most in this period in history when we're confronting a pandemic is what could possibly happen? And our imaginations go wild. For some, our imaginations are so overpowering that we become paralyzed by the possibilities of what will occur. And some of us utilize that fear to act, to reach out to others, to figure out what do others need. Some of us will wash our hands more often. Some will put on gloves, and some will use tissues so as to not come into contact with other people sitting next to me on the plane. A woman so afraid of what she might contract, she wiped down the seat with a Clorox wipe. She wiped down the armrest. She wiped down the screen in front of her. She donned a mask and then she started to wipe me down. Some of us, in our imaginations, we choose to do something to occupy our time, to occupy our attention, so to divert us from the fears that might conjure up within our imaginations. And that's exactly what happens with the Jewish people in this week's Parsha. It says, Vayar ha'am ki boshesh Moshe laredet min ha'ar. Moses came a little late, coming down the mountain. They were watching their clocks to see when he would return. And he was a little late, according to their estimation. And that's the moment where their imaginations go wild. They think to themselves, oh, Gewalt, maybe Moses died. Maybe our leader has left us. Maybe we were too much for him and we are abandoned now. Vayar ha'am, they were afraid. Ki boshesh Moshe laredet min ha'ar. They became afraid because their imaginations ran wild. And in that moment, they began to imagine the worst case scenario. They couldn't have said to themselves instead, well, Moses was taking a little extra time just to make sure he got it right. Don't worry, things are okay. Maybe he stopped for a candy bar on the way down. No, their imaginations went to the worst possible scenario, not the best possible case. And the Midrash teaches us something extraordinary. In the Talmud, in Masechet Shabbat, it says, Yom Ba. The day came when Moses was supposed to return. Satan ve'irbeib et ha'olam. Satan came forth and confused everybody. He confounded them. He created a mass confusion in their minds. Shash ani ba lasos. And so in that moment, in that second where they imagined Moses was supposed to return and he didn't, Satan got in there and started planting ideas in our heads. And we started imagining the worst case scenario. Satan moves from insidious speech to visual fantasy. As the beginning of the world was chaos and God created order, so too in this moment the Jewish people feel chaos and they need some order. And they start to build idols in their minds and then manifest idols with their hands. Because that's what we do. In moments of chaos and confusion, we seek to do something to make ourselves feel better. So let me suggest one simple message from this morning's Parsha. If you feel a need to imagine the worst case scenario, choose to envision the best opportunity. Instead of imagining how many people will become infected, and imagining how many people will fall prey to this disease at this moment, imagine for yourself how many lives will be saved, how much community will be built, how many people will draw connections to one another, whether they be in virtual space or in real time and in real place. Instead of imagining this to be the pandemic that will end human civilization, rather imagine this is the moment where we come together. Maybe not literally shoulder to shoulder, but a sense of community that transcends space. A sense of community in which we all begin to care for one another. Whether the diversity in this country draws us into a more perfect union. There's no question that at this moment in history, we are feeling in our country the greatest division that has been felt for at least a generation. Maybe this pandemic has come upon us to say we can do more together than we can do separately. If we begin to think about the goodness in humanity rather than the evil of human beings, maybe this is a moment in which we can imagine a future that's better, that's greater, that's more loving, that's kinder, that's more compassionate, that's more caring, and then we'll bring greater healing to the world. We have a choice in this moment to ask ourselves the question, what are we afraid of? To put something real to it and then say, I'm going to imagine a solution that's far better. Shabbat Shalom. We continue with Musaf, page 184 of the Chatzi Kaddish. Please rise.
יתקרב ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועמד יברך ירותיה